like with this modern build of the Token Druid, now that we don't have, exotic mount sellers in the list as we had for a while, or of course Ysera Awakened, or Ysera Unleashed, sorry, in the list with all the dragons in there. It's a lot more early game focused. It doesn't have quite the same late game potential as it used to. But man, that early game, if it hits it, is absolutely absurd. And Bankyugi is going to have to be on his A game to fight back against it. As we get our first look at the first game of the year here for Hearthstone Grandmasters, let's kick it off with a bang between Shaxy and Bankyugi.
Absolutely. So when talking about Token Druid, we did already go over their two most powerful weapons in terms of building the board. The first one being Gibberling, but it's hard to rely on getting insane Gibberling hand very, very early on. And you're more likely to see, say, turn 3, turn 4 Glowfly Swarm, and that's your first big threat you have to face. So in terms of what Priest does to pick that apart, Condemn can often fall a little bit short because if you're not already on 5 mana, the AoE is a bit lacking. However, we do see Bankyugi still hold on to it here. He has the palm reading as well to help give him cheapening effects and perhaps other ways to stave off the first couple boards. But there's a Gibberling already for Shaxy.
That's the one. That's what you're looking for. It's not the kind of one drop that you just throw down onto the board willy-nilly. I absolutely agree with that. He needs to plan this hand quite carefully because obviously it could be Gibberling, Coin, Vake into into Fungal Fortunes, I suppose, to refill his hand. But he might want to try and get a little bit more value out of this hand first and save those innovates to get out an early Arbor Up or an early Glowfly Swarm instead.
Right, especially since the breakpoint of Gibberlings as 1/1s on the board, that can be very threatening against... Oh, Cat appeared. I love to see it. Shaxy's constant companion. Yeah, at 1 health, the Gibberlings are not threatening to Priest whatsoever because Condemn, even without ranking up, is able to clear all of that. So I think it's right for Shaxy to be a bit more patient here. He's also holding onto the coin. And my brain that has played a little bit too much Classic is struggling to remember that Innervate only gives you...
Yeah. It's a different world entirely. Bankyugi, I think you're probably just looking at Draconic Studies. Shadow Form, despite being 2 mana, now Gia, and not 3, is, I think, just a little bit too slow for the most part, whereas Draconic Studies, even if you can just hit Circus Amalgam or something like that in the early game, it's just something to throw down onto the board, which can be very, very nice to fight back proactively.
I agree, but look at these very expensive dragons. I believe with the core set rotation and the changes to the big dragons, all of them essentially still staying in standard in one way or another, the dragon pool has gotten significantly more expensive than in the previous year. So Draconic Studies, a bit difficult to use, but that Malagos could still possibly come in handy for Bankyugi. It's really now just a waiting game. He has Renew for a second shot at finding an AoE, but for now he's just hoping that the Condemn can stave him off for long enough.
Okay, going in with the Gibberlings now. Again, you can tell he kind of wanted to save the coin in the Innovate to go with a Solar Eclipse Arbor Up as soon as possible. But I suppose this will have to do for the meantime, as he does get Pounce, which I suppose is just another Gibberling, if nothing else in hand.
I do like this timing a lot from Shaxy because even if this first board gets destroyed by a Condemn or something along those lines, he will be entering the 4 mana breakpoint next turn, which means the Innervate that he already had in hand could give him a Glowfly. Unfortunately, he hasn't drawn into it with the Fungal Fortune, so that might be a bit of his gamble going wrong there. But with a Lightning Bloom, we could see some sparks go off with these eclipses everywhere.
And at the end of all of this, I think Bankyugi will be very happy, in all honesty, despite seeing a huge board develop with just essentially 1 minion being committed. The fact that he can clear this off with, the Condemn this turn, Heart of Cthulhu for the following turn is a fantastic pickup as well. It's just very, very clean for him, and he can just keep chugging along with his game plan of surviving.
Yeah, the Heart of Cthulhu is a great pickup for Bankyugi because now he doesn't have to worry about using this first Condemn. He has a second round of AoE later on. Elucia for the discounted version could also be the final nail in the coffin. I don't expect Bankyugi to be playing that anytime soon because he has a lot of zero-cost spells, but it seems like the tools are all coming together in advance, which is what you want to feel like as Priest.
I guess you just don't know what their hand is. I was thinking, like, maybe you could get away with using it there if they have lightning blooms in hand or anything cheap. And like, you could have played Renew and Holy Smite there. Like, you keep the Heart of Cthulhu. Yeah, it probably gets a little bit better later on. I don't know.
It's a tough call. Yeah, I feel like because Shaxy had his Gibberling turn and there wasn't something like Bloom into board buff, that Bankyugi probably felt like the hand wasn't cheap enough to justify it. But I will say Bankyugi is a player that has played braver Illusias than I'm used to. So if he's not doing it here, it's probably not a safe idea. He's going for the Hysteria plus. I'm not sure if he's going to commit Holy Sight here as well, but I like the idea of holding on to the mass AoE when he has conditional AoE that he can use in this spot.
Yeah, this Token Druid feels like the one deck in the game against which Hysteria is actually not that good, because you just kill 2/2/2s most of the time instead of obliterating their entire board for 3 mana as it is against most decks.
Well, Shaxy has had first 2 rounds of his threats picked apart very easily, but he can refill with, if he wants to, Solar Eclipse and Fungal. Might overdraw at that point, but he does have the Pounce. He's going to start with just Fungal here, hold on to the Eclipses to maybe pair with Arbor up. Okay, guess the weights, maybe?
Yeah, I really like holding back on the Solar Eclipse with Shaxy. Like, even if I haven't had extensive knowledge with this build of Token Druid, you quickly realize in any version that plays Fungal and Solar, or really draw of any kind in Solar Eclipse, you really don't want to use your Solar Eclipses for draw most of the time, because you have a lot of redundancy in the draw. There's plenty of card draw effects, and you just want to be making sure you're using that for the punches, you know, the aggressive pushes onto the board.
This turn, though, Darok, I wonder if this could be the Illusia turn, purely because Shaxy has not given Bankyugi much of anything to do. Of course, if Bankyugi gives Shaxy his hand, that means his Cthulhu is not going to be active anymore, because Shaxy is very likely to just play a Cthulhu spell. But I don't necessarily see Cthulhu as a win condition in this matchup. As Control Priest, you can just run them out of threats. You don't need to kill them per se, just make sure that they don't kill you. And we do see Bankyugi go for it here, and he has not that much that he can dump, quite honestly, but Arbor Up is relatively valuable to get rid of, and he can fit in the Lunar Eclipse as well.
Yeah, with no blooms in hand, you know, it's about as good as you're going to get, I think, in terms of an Illusia here. Obviously, I agree. You go for the Arbor Up here. That is by far the scariest card that your opponent has in their arsenal. And then all of a sudden, he's ahead on board. Obviously, yes, it's going to get wiped up by the Heart of Cthulhu for the most part, but then it's only 2 turns time before the Malagos comes down in its own right.
Right. And by that point, Bankyugi will have his other Condemn upgraded to the 2 AoE version, and he'll just not run out of resources. So I think this is a good spot for Bankyugi. It's a rare situation where Token Druid gives Priest that breathing room, but the discounted Illusia combined with just him not giving Shaxy any proactive play with his own hand really justifies his play.
That Ogre Mancer for Shaxy, if nothing else, is just... I mean, I guess in a way it was a good draw, because I was going to say he has to play the Heart of Cthulhu in order to clear up most of this board. But then Ogremancer comes down, and to be honest, it essentially ends the game, because his entire deck is basically spells. And this tells you how devastating Ogremancer is against Druid. He gives up an insane board clear, for the most part, apart from the Illusia, to play a minion that's just going to die on board.
Right. I think this is good understanding from Shaxy. We saw Bankyugi with a little bit of a expression there, because it did look like a relatively clean Heart of Cthulhu to get rid of most of this board. But Shaxy realizes if he just does that, like you said, Bankyugi responds with Ogremancer, and Shaxy has no counterplay against it. So now Bankyugi has a pretty clean turn to just get one of the Cthulhu activations. He's just waiting on either of his Malagis to be playable, and by then it might be checkmate.
Certainly feels that way. He's not even going to overdraw because he has a Desperate Prayer, if nothing else.
Curious that Shaxy didn't choose to dump that Desperate Prayer from his hand, because that is mostly in the deck for synergy with Zyrella, and also just like it. I mean, Bankyugi can choose when to play it now. So.
Oh no, he did. That was the one off the top. Yeah. He
oh, sorry, my bad.
Right. Yeah. Otherwise, yes, that would have been weird.
Okay, searching for the Glowfly. It finally appears, and there is a Lightning Bloom. However, He knows that the Heart of Cthulhu is still in Bankyugi's hand. Bankyugi very smartly using the harder to use removal spell, keeping the mass AoE intact.
Yeah, you have to just wait here, and then next turn, obviously you have Glowfly plus Soul of the Forest, and I think that's gonna just have to be his one final prayer of trying to take this game. He has strong follow-up with Solar plus the Pride to buff his entire board, but I really don't see it getting there at this point with Heart of Cthulhu, Soul Mirror, as well as a full hand, again, drawn full of spells. This is pressure, this is removal, this is value, this is everything you need at this point in the game. And this is not like the priests of old that just sat around removing all your stuff. Bankyugi is going to start killing Shaxy soon.
I will say, though, that among all the spells that Bankyugi drew, there is not the second Condemn. So his AoE is quite expensive at the moment. So if he has to deal with this first layer on top of the Soul of the Forest, it's not a snap decision. He can, of course, fish with the Thrive in the Shadows, but it might take his entire turn, for example, if he has to go like Thrive into Condemn and then Heart of Cthulhu.
This is a weird one. Like, Pride's Fury does pull it out of range of Heart of Cthulhu. It also makes it less susceptible to Soul Mirror, of course. But you are then vulnerable to Zyrella, I suppose would be the scary part if you go for that.
Amaro as well. Yeah, but I think Shaxy went for the safest line, right? Because in terms of what's hardest for Priest to get rid of, it's 2 layers rather than 1 layer of tall stuff. Because they need to have at least 2 AoE spells that all fit in the amount of mana given. Bankyugi has not hit his other Condemn, I believe. Maybe I'm just being dumb and there's only 1 Condemn to begin with.
I think he was running 2 in the list. It would definitely be a bit odd to only run 1 Condemn. It feels like a very, very powerful card in the list.
And because of that, his mana flexibility is suffering big time now. We could just see him pick apart half the board instead. He can go for a Nova 2 value trades and say even buff his Malagos so that it's a consistent Apotheosis threat. But it's not clean.
It really isn't.
Okay, so he gets to get rid of 3 things now here. He does have the other Condemn in the deck. If this is working right, then I believe I can click on remaining cards here and we can see what is in Bankyugi's deck still. He just missed the Discover on Condemn twice, and that's the cheapest AoE. So unfortunate for him here. That means Shaxy finally has a window to go in and deal a lot of damage with Solar Eclipse and Pride's Fury.
Wow, Gia, that is a cool new toy to play with.
Isn't it? And you can go ahead and show the other features later on, Derek. I don't want to steal all of the fun.
And here we see kind of the power, and I suppose the why Pride's Fury was initially slept on so much was because, you know, yes, this is a very formidable board in terms of its ability to be removed, but for Solar Eclipse into a buff card, this isn't that much of a burst in terms of damage. You know, if this was Arbor Up or the Savage Roar, you'd just be dead at this point in terms of the damage put forward. So it's it gives a chance for the board to be cleared by Bankyugi, but it's going to have to be right now because this is absolutely threatening lethal next turn.
Yeah, they have far too much health for Soul Mirror or just Heart of Cthulhu to deal with. So I'm looking at Samuro for double Apotheosis just so he heals back up to full, and I believe leaves 4 minions on the board, which I think should make him safe to things that aren't Savage Roar.
Right, I mean, obviously he heals back to full.
Right. There might be a better combination of instead, say, Samuro, Apotheosis, and then Hysteria, but that's a lot of math that I can't do that quickly.
I mean, you could start with Hysteria, right, if you don't want to have your Samuro die. If you want to go down that line.
Yeah, it's possible. We do see Bankyugi committing the first part of his turn here. Looks like he is going for the double Apotheosis line, which means that 3 minions, sorry, I miscounted, at the end of this will be left. So I do believe this makes him safe to everything but double Savage Roar.
It would have to be a lot of
plus another thing. Yeah, it would have to be a very specific combination of cards. And I'm not seeing it for Shaxy anymore after this big Samuro clear.
Yeah, the problem is that now all of a sudden the rest of the clears actually become pretty powerful against Soul Mirror, Heart of Cthulhu, Hysteria, likely to clear up the rest of things very, very nicely here. I do like the pick of Guess the Way, I think, over the Soul of the Forest. Generally, that is what you'd go for, but this game, I don't think is coming down to whether or not you can stick a few 2-2s afterwards. You need to get the kill now.
Slips away.
Dark, I think I'm being dumb. I don't think Savage Roar's in standard anymore.
Oh, right, yeah, okay.
Oh my goodness, that...
Well, the Arbor up instead.
Right, let's say that we knew that from the beginning. Still an impressive amount of buffs that Shaxy gets here. The fact that now Druid has, in the place of Savage Roar, if you want to call it that, a buff spell that gives your board more lasting power instead of immediate burst means that it can be a bit more difficult for Priest to deal with. But we do see here now Cyrella, new card for Priest. However, Bankyugi's at full health, so you can't quite activate it. Soul Mirror should make relatively quick work of this, though. If he also wants to commit Hysteria, that works.
Yeah, I was thinking you could just go for like Soul Mirror first and then afterwards follow up with the Hysteria, but I guess that is, I suppose, a lot of removal. It doesn't even necessarily have to be committed here. Like, heal the opponent's face and then Cyrella here probably gets the job done.
You've got me fired.
This probably gets the job done as well. As long as you're dominating the board, I think it's pretty clear that there is just not enough pressure on the board anymore for Shaxy to answer this.
And Shaxy knows it. That is game 1 to Bankyugi in what I believe is the expected outcome in this matchup. Priest has a generally good matchup against Token Druid because of all those tools. And even though it got a bit scary there in the middle, where Bankyugi couldn't hit the cheap AoE in the second Condemn, he still managed to hold on. And I think it's largely due to the fact that, well, Savage Roar being outside of standard now makes Druid's immediate reach a bit less threatening before, if not their lasting power.
As we see Shaxy's biggest obstacle every season of GM. It's not his opponent, it's not the metagame, it's just trying to distract his cat from walking across his keyboard at all points. But I think this is maybe indicative of something of a trend that we might start to see. You know, obviously Token Druid is a very volatile deck. Its ceilings are very high, but the floor of its bad draws is very low as well. But you were saying that it kind of looks like the stats indicate that it doesn't necessarily line up against the good decks that it's maybe trying to target, as you may have hoped, like against the Paladins, Rogues, and Mages of this meta.
Yeah, I did get a chance to ask Lambi Series about this. He himself is not playing Token Druid, I believe, but based on ladder stats, I've seen that Token Druid actually doesn't even perform that well against Secret Paladin, which I feel like if it doesn't beat that, and you're banning Mage anyway, there's not much point to bringing it. But what I'm hearing from pro players like Lambi is that it does perform much better, I mean, outside of ladder, because there's a lot of people that make mistakes playing into Oh My God, for example. And it might be after the ban phase and with a bit more experience on how to pilot the deck, it could be doing better. That said, there are certain players who dropped 0-3 with Token Druid earlier on this week. I think Don comes to mind there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have the greatest amount of faith in the deck, but that was, I mean, for the most part, against Priest, I feel like you need those incredibly dominant starts where you get out an early glow fight and they don't have the clear, or you're able to go Bloom into Solar Eclipse plus Arbor up right at the start of the game. This deck, however, Gia, is one that I have a lot more faith in. I had not played it for the first few days. You know, I was going down the train of playing a whole bunch of Mage, trying a lot of Rogue, trying Xananan Miracle Priest. That was a lot of fun as well. But then when I did start playing this deck, I kind of just won. And I didn't stop winning for a couple of hours. It is absolutely brutally powerful. I fully understand the claims that a lot of people have been making that this is the best deck in Standard right now, even with the dominance of Mage. Even if I don't necessarily think it's so clear-cut, I fully understand the points that they are making, as the early aggression that comes with the secret package, the mid game that comes with the Aldor Truth Seekers, all the buffs, and then the late game with Librams of Hope and Lady Liadrin. It's just so brutal at all stages in the game.
Yeah, Libram Paladin as an archetype really didn't lose too many of their important tools as we moved into the Year of the Griffin, and what they got instead was more consistent draw. They have the Knight of Anointment and the sword itself that draws the secrets from the deck and fixes their early game slowness problem, so to speak. But we do have on the other side here Bankyugi on the Rogue, which I believe has a lot of potential to beat Paladin. Maybe not necessarily this Watch Post version, but anything that runs card draw with efficient Octobot and of course Prize Plunderer to easily pick apart big minions is something that Paladin needs to watch out for.
Yeah, when we were doing our play testing the other day, practicing a lot of Rogue against Paladin as very, very popular decks in this metagame. When I was piloting the Rogue against the Paladin, I spent the early few turns like, oh, there's so many secrets in play, they have such a dominant board, what do I even do? And then I just kind of won most of the time as the Rogue. It feels like they have such a explosive mid-game, because even though the Paladin has consistently powerful plays, a lot of the time their turn 5, turn 6, like play a Truth Seeker, which is a strong setup, but it's not necessarily so strong of a play onto the board, whereas Rogue, you're going Jandis, a lot of the lists have Tenwu to like bounce it back to the hand, Shadow Step. Jandis is always insanely powerful at the moment, it feels like, with the pool of 5-drops that are available. And in addition to the Watch Posts, specifically Morshan, which is a nightmare for Paladin to deal with in my experience. I think this could be a good matchup once again for Bankyugi on the Rogue.
Yes, I definitely think so. I think the Tenwu tech, or the more miracle-based Rogue that doesn't have the Watch Posts, is not quite as popular in APAC as it would be in Europe currently, but still, the core of the deck with the efficient removal and just very annoying things for Paladin should prove to be a big headache. Jandis is the biggest threat in the deck, even more so than Kargal, I would say. Jandis tends to put more stats on the board if you combine all the times it plays Shadow Step, because the pool of 5-drops in Standard is just stronger than it's ever been right now.
And I think one of the biggest things that I learned about this matchup is, at first I was thinking, Prize Plunderer, Brain Freeze, these are great removal tools against what is an aggressive deck that wants to play a lot of buffs. But then I came to what I assume is the same conclusion that Bankyugi did, is, oh, I can remove if I want to, or I can play Octobot, get a 4-mana Jandis, a 6-mana Kargal, and just win the game without having to worry about removing their stuff, because what you do is just more powerful if you can hit that mana reduction from Octobot.
And Octobot is great in this matchup because it's one of the ones where you can pretty safely play it on turn 2 and say that there's no way you can one-shot this. So it's either you don't hero power, or you just ignore it for a while, or I just get the Frenzy for free. And that's not something that can be said of every single matchup. However, Shaxy is the first to put his new powerful card in play, Sword of the Fallen. And if we take a look at what this card does, I'm not really sure if we need to highlight this, but I want to highlight this because we can. It means that you are able to cast a secret from your deck. That means you're pulling it out from the deck, you're making the rest of your deck better, more consistent, and you're getting a lot of value. The card is just insane. 65% win rate when played, I believe, and we'll see if that comes to fruition here.
Yeah, absolutely brutally powerful. As I was saying, it's kind of the cornerstone of that early game resilience that Paladin has. It's so difficult when you have all the spells making it so you can't even play minions because of the Galloping Savior. You can't kill anything because of Avenge. You can't play any spells because of Oh My Yogg. It's so difficult to fight against. But Shaxy has missed the minions in the early game very importantly. So these spells at the moment are not going to be getting the job done quite as of yet.
Right. Bankyugi has the secrets to contend with. Shaxy is running one Oh My Yogg, or sorry, we don't quite see which ones are left already, but the secret package generally tends to include Oh My Yogg and Avenge. And there is one more, the Galloping Savior, of course. How can I forget the pony?
Yeah, he's going with the list that runs 1 Savior and 2 Avenge, whereas I think generally more popular is 2 Savior, 1 Avenge in most of the lists I see. And some of them are even running Noble Sacrifice as well, just for an even bigger and less predictable secret package. Again, I keep saying the wrong thing. Because the problem is here that you know exactly what these secrets are when all 3 of them are in play, so it becomes a fair bit easier to play around, actually.
Yes, and Bankyugi starting off with the coin. There's not that many possible outcomes you can get here. He unfortunately gets one of the worst ones. Backstab gets rid of his own minion. Sometimes you get Lightning Bloom or Innervate and you're pretty happy about it. And Omayog has drawn the ire of players such as Subtle because of that. But the important thing is he is still able to clear the board without Avenge going off, and very likely will have an answer to the pony that comes out if it's not just a trade.
Yeah, taking the route of deliberately proccing here on the Galloping Savior, which is something you often don't want to do. It's kind of one of the things that people miss about playing against Paladin quite often, is that you just want to leave that unactivated. But I think here, given that he had the ability to kill it on board, it was pretty reasonable, especially given that there's only one in the deck, so it won't be able to be replayed on the following turn. To just activate it there, and he's rewarded handsomely with a Morshan outpost here, which is so difficult to deal with.
Right, in most cases. However, Shaxy does have his Libram of Justice if he wants to just shut that down and not have to worry about it. I will say it seems like an extremely slow play though.
Yeah.
I think it's worth it to get the Aldor down. You just give them a 2-2, but the benefit is you get the Libram discounts, you get the 5-7 on board, and the board clear becomes a lot easier to play next turn.
So, I mean, I'm kind of looking already at maybe getting a bit fancy here and like shadow stepping the watch post just as an idea to power up your Cargel for the following turn, which does look like a very likely play. Although I guess with no mana left over, you're probably just taking your 2 5/5s and being fairly happy about it, all things considered.
I'll admit, I did not see that play whatsoever. But it is worth considering because, I mean, Shaxy in terms of removal, it's just the Libram of Justice that can deal with 5/5s pretty cleanly. Outside of that, Paladin struggles to come back on board now that they're not running Lord Barolf most of the time. Shaxy, again, it's an option here to get rid of the post, but I'm not sure it's worth it.
So what else are we doing here? Talon draws you, what would that be, the second Truth Seeker, which is okay, but it's really not very much tempo at all.
Yeah. The alternative play to Libram of Justice, I think, is Knight of Anointment plus the sword, and the sword is guaranteed to just get the one Omayog that's left here, which is, when all is said and done, not that strong of a board presence, so Shaxy is going to bite the bullet. That watch post drew one of the most important resources out from Shaxy's hand, so I think Bankyugi should feel pretty safe about the 2 5/5s sticking here if he just wants the 2.
Yeah, I think in this instance you have a reasonable expectation that you're going to be able to go face on the following turn with your 2 5/5s. I believe Libram of Hope would be playable exactly at 7 mana at this point, which is the scary play that your opponent could make on the following turn. But outside of that, you are just laughing.
And it's getting quite scary for Shaxy just in terms of dying to the reach, because Bankyugi, he hasn't drawn any of his field contacts so far. And that means that his resources are running a bit dry, but he has happened to draw into the most powerful burst in the deck at the moment. The Wicked Stab's just pretty much better eviscerates at the moment, and if Bankyugi waits a bit longer, they could be dealing 6 damage apiece.
Yeah, the Divine Shield and Taunt on Talon, you know, is obviously what makes it a playable card, because it can be very, very annoying, kind of similarly to Ziliax back in the day. But still, this 5/5 very likely being able to connect face. It's just getting closer and closer to that burn damage that is so brutal. And here with 2 very strong options, like, honestly, I was kind of looking at the Combustion just to clear off this board so cleanly.
True. Combined with Pen Flinger, he would have to first fling on his Octobot, I assume, to get all the discounts done cleanly.
Oh yeah, true.
Because then it would be 1 damage short on the 6/2.
Right.
He could still be going for an Octobot play, but drawing first before he gets the discounts. It does mean, though, that Penflinger won't necessarily return to the hand. There's nothing that really looks like it wants to be Shadow Steps. I'll hear the argument for One Thief, though.
That definitely felt like that should have gone on the Divine Shield, though, there. Unless I suppose
so
he's
as well.
not killing at all in order to play around Avenge, but even then you can just ping off the Divine Shield, right? And it still weakens the board significantly.
This might be a reach, but it could be that Bankyugi doesn't want Shaxy to be able to kill the Taelan on its own next turn, but this trade now makes me wonder what went wrong there. Maybe Bankyugi just values the face damage that much. There is a lot of burst in his hand for next turn, make no mistake.
That's fair. It's definitely not wrong. It just felt like he could have maybe found a way to get some minion damage to face over the next turn or two.
In any case, Shaxy has a likely chance to pick apart the board, even if Kazakus doesn't hit Fire Bloom off of the Lesser Golem this turn. He could potentially just take the 5 cost instead, or even the 10 cost if he's feeling very greedy, but I feel like his life is in a bit too much danger for that.
Yeah, I do feel like I generally end up taking 5 cost in most matchups at the moment. I was kind of wrong in my initial prediction that 1 cost would be the way to go always. As it turns out, copying this minion generally feels like the most powerful option, and copying a 5/5 is a significantly bigger gain in stats than copying a 1/1.
And you can see how much respect Shaxy is paying to his health total because he traded his high attack minion to get rid of the threat on Bankyugi's side rather than the taunt. Starting to feel the pressure. And I think that's a reasonable assumption to make because Bankyugi was sending all the flingers face instead of the Divine Shields.
As Avenge goes in, Avenge comes out from the Safety Inspector as well. Jandas is an interesting card to find now, especially at this juncture, because it's kind of reaching that point for Bankyugi, as you correctly pointed out, without the field contacts, no second secret passage either. His board control route is kind of grinding to a halt here. And so the efficacy of Jandas here is actually kind of questionable compared to how powerful it usually is, as compared to just pushing a bunch of burn to the face instead.
No, for real, Bankyugi is running out of resources for sure. He is short of lethal because the Wicked Stabs are not at rank 3 yet. But if he decided to go for just Hail Mary, let me cash in the damage now and try to get Penflinger lethal for next turn, that setup is completely checkmated by Libram of Hope. So I think he's just trying to hold out until he hits 10 mana for the full value Wicked Stab, and Jandas was the play for that situation, even though the board looks very inconvenient for Jandas to deal with.
Oh, and this Greater Golem is greater than great. This is disgusting with this wide board buff. Rogue definitely does not have a way to deal with all of these minions, even if you have double, triple, quadruple Prize Plunderer coming down in one turn. Board control has been lost at this point, and it's just whether Bankyugi can find the burst damage in time to win this game, which, with the amount of damage coming through, does seem unlikely.
It's just, there's just not enough burst, right? Okay, there's another Wicked Stab. Was one of these generated?
I think that's one of the problems with Deck Tracker. It doesn't recognize Wicked Stab so well.
I see. So in that case, there's not much burst in the deck whatsoever. So what I think he needs to discover here is a way to freeze this board. Okay, that's burst, Mancrick's wife. He did step the Mancrick as well, if I recall.
And that is field contact. I don't think there's any outs for lethal, even if you're pointing everything at face. Assuming you got second Mancrick, I still think the damage would be a little bit short with the mana that you're working with. So it is just about trying to survive on this turn.
I agree. Which is a very tall order. It probably means he has to Wicked Stab a minion as well. I just don't think it gets there.
These are good cards if you want to survive, to be fair. These are very, very good cards.
There's just too much damage on the board. Even if Prize Plunderer takes care of another 6 cost minion, or sorry, 6 attack minion, there's 14 remaining, assuming the other 6 attack gets frozen, plus the sword.
Oh no. I mean, it draws a card, I guess, which is not terrible, but in the end, the pressure is just too much. The damage was not there. He was a turn away from getting Wicked Stab rank 3 in order to just deal 12 burst damage plus the Penflingers. It would have easily been lethal on the following turn. But very wisely from Shaxy, going with the wide board buff, pushing everything face, and realizing the exact moment to strike and lock out that burst potential, which is, I think what he would have had a pretty strong read was in Bankyugi's hand. It was a very nicely played Paladin game.
True. I mean, from the rogue side as well, it seemed like Bankyugi had strong control over the board for the majority of that game, but it took that one turn where Shaxy dumped a bunch of one-cost cards, realized that Bankyugi's hand was more burst than it was value, and then took the perfect golem for the situation. I think very cleanly done by Shaxy, but a bit unfortunate too for Bankyugi to not hit field contact or the other secret passage early enough.
Yeah, all just coming a little bit together a little bit awkwardly. The watch post didn't come down quite in time. You know, for the Morshan to be truly devastating against Paladin, you really want it on turn 2 or 3 with the coin in order to try and stop them from developing any kind of presence. But again, I liked what I saw a lot there from Shaxy, taking down what is, I think, generally considered a pretty unfavorable matchup for the Paladin. But even then, with Priest gone for Bankyugi, Paladin gone for Shaxy, I think both players are in with a very decent shot, especially as we were saying with the Paladin out of the way. That's one of the better decks left, and the Druid left for Shaxy. You could argue things are actually still looking good for Bankyugi even after that loss.
You could argue it. I'm really just curious about this Druid. I see it as a wild card. Like, clearly, you can tell that I haven't been playing that much of it because I just straight up forgot. Savage Roar is only in Classic and Wild at the moment. But the latter stats seem to have it at, quite a bad spot in the meta. But if there's so many people in APAC bringing it, and just looking at the deck, theoretically, it can do some very broken things. I'm maybe just not seeing the full story in these latter stats. I will say, though, that it seems like, at least through Diamond and Legend, that Paladin has a pretty good matchup against Token Druid.
It's something that's a little bit surprising, I guess, given that you would expect, these wide boards, Paladin struggles in terms of the removal. But I guess, as we were kind of hypothesizing, Oh My Yogg can be a huge disruption. Even Galloping Savior is just so brutal against a deck that wants to play many, many cards on the same turn to get these Gibblings big, to get these big Glowfly Swarms played early on. So definitely, I'm hoping that we get to see that one at some point. But as you were saying, with the rogue left on both sides here, the only difference there is that we have the full-on watch post rogue for Bankyugi. Shaxy still has some watch posts in his list. He's not a madman with the far watch post, but hasn't gone with the full version with Kargal as well. Do you have any preference in terms of the rogues, whether you go for, I suppose, the kind of straight tempo version as opposed to the watch post variant?
I do prefer tempo because, honestly, this is my preference. I hate playing cards that can't attack. It just feels so pointless. I can't see how strong it's being because it's my opponent who's suffering. But it's funny, though, that he is still running Ogremancer, which is kind of like an OG watch post card in that it punishes your opponent for doing something they want to do. It doesn't have synergy with Kargal, though, but I agree that if you're only running 2 far watch posts and not the 3-cost one, it's probably not worth it to run Kargal instead.
Yeah.
And instead, having a bit more disruption in the way of Cult Neophyte is the way Shaxy has chosen to go, which I'm not necessarily sure if Neophyte disrupts, say, Paladins that much, but I can see it getting work done against Token Druid and Priest, possibly.
Yeah, exactly. I've been playing a fair bit of Priest myself, mainly the Miracle version, although I have been dabbling in the Control Priest. But that Mage Rogue, there's a lot of decks at the moment, I would imagine Druid as well, that feel very vulnerable to Cult Neophyte. I think double inclusion with Shadow Step is a very, very smart idea because, I mean, often that is one of your most premium Shadow Step targets. If you just have a decent-sized board with, I don't know, Mankrik, Field Contacts, Jandis, whatever it may be, they don't have to be especially dominant minions. Just locking out those removal cards from your opponent, or even the draw effects, as so much card draw is offered through spells at the moment, is so important. But it is going to be the rogue on the other side. We're getting a flip of the previous matchup, so it would definitely hurt here for Bankyugi if he is unable to get the win in this matchup after he was upset on the other side, I suppose, in this exact instance, yeah.
His build of Paladin, we also always just have to look at what's going on in the 4-cost slot, because there is still a raging debate going on as to whether you're supposed to run Cariel Rome in that slot or Kazakus Golem Shaper. Clearly, we saw for Shaxy that Kazakus was the card that won him the game, but in other instances, it can be far too slow. Rogue, if they can get an early Jandis, notoriously can just make your Kazakus do nothing on the turn it's played. And then, of course, the fact that your Librams can get discounted to 4-cost breakpoints if you're not careful can mean that Kazakus is also inactive. It's just something you have to watch out for.
That's exactly right. I am the version I've been playing on ladder is the exact same version that Bankyugi has been playing. I got it from Bobby X on Twitter. I don't know if he got it from the same source or if he just landed upon it. But I do agree that with Kazakus and Libram of Judgment specifically, things get a little bit awkward because then if you've played one Aldor Attendant, all of a sudden your Libram of Justice disrupts Kazakus. If you play a Truth Seeker and an Attendant, your Libram of Judgment disrupts the Kazakus if it's in deck. There's a lot of ways that Kazakus can become inactive in this deck. But for the most part against Rogue, that's not your biggest concern. You're just trying to lock down the early game and push for a lot of damage before you close out with the Pen Flingers and the Libram of Judgment for a lot of extra burst that Bankyugi's list affords.
Certainly this is the way to do it with his best 1-drop and also first day of school to give him a bit more flexibility with his mana later on. Picks up Knight of Anointment as well. I love this card. It just makes Paladin's card draw so nice. It reminds me of Christology in a way where it draws you cards that draw you even more cards if you're lucky, and it gets you Hand of Adal. Not quite the Sword of the Fallen available just yet though.
And this hand for Shaxy is a little awkward. You know, Field Contact obviously affords a lot of draw, but without Octobot in the early game, it's just too expensive. You really need to wait until turn 6, I would say, maybe 5 if you have a Shadow Step in hand, for it to really get anything done. But instead here we see a pretty cool line actually from Shaxy, not necessarily just because of the 3-2 body, but because of the disruption it affords of the expected lines.
Right, it definitely means that Hand of Adal can't be played. If there was Libram of Wisdom here, it's still a bit iffy because that would still let the Aldor Attendant with the discount play it and then take a value trade. But if that's not exactly what's in hand here, Shaxy is very likely to get a value trade, be ahead on board, and just more comfortably play the Watch Post. It so happens, though, that Bankyugi has double Knights to follow that up. Ooh.
Now with Octobot being found, all of a sudden, this is actually looking pretty good for Shaxy. He's able to get down Field Contact and discount the Brain Freeze as well, which is already, you know, even if you're just drawing 1 or 2 cards, that's something to do in the mid-game after you've gone for Kazakus.
Yeah, and this is a spot where if it's not exactly Hand of Adal plus Libram of Wisdom,
right,
the Octobot is not getting one-shotted. I don't know if Babbling Book can give you anything here. Not with 2 mana remaining, right?
Right, yeah, like Devolving Missiles is the best you're going to get, I think, to be able to answer this.
True. If he's not playing it, though, it probably means that we're going to see Wisdom's pre-buffed onto the Knight of Anointment. And this is a question I've asked myself many times, where do you just give them the buff when they don't have flexibility? And Bankyugi says yes.
Yeah, I think I'm seeing more and more players going for this route because it's not only when they have less cards, it's before they go Secret Passage, which is a very common play you see of Secret Passage. Then you bump the Octobot to get the discount on your new hand of cards that you can just throw down right at the start of the game. So I do like this line that is being taken a lot here.
It could be that Shaxy just ends up playing his normal cost Mancrick here, though. The alternative is Watch Post and Dagger, because with Brain Freeze that can clear the entire board, and you know it's ideal for a Watch Post to be alone on the board. That's when it's most annoying for your opponent.
You can go Kazakus for a 1-cost Golem in order to go with Field Contact. Quite a few of them have Battle Cries on the second effect.
I can see that, but I feel like Shaxy's hand is shaping up for a 5-cost yet again here. Field Contact with some cheaper Battle Cries probably gets him more draw later on.
True.
In the end, he goes for the Mancrick, which gives him the strongest tempo, but leaves a single Argent Squire for Bankyugi. I guess it's not too scary, even if there is Hand of Adal here. I mean, even if there are the double Librams of Wisdom, it still doesn't value trade with Mancrick.
And already, look at the problem we're in. That Kazakus has a green border. I have made this mistake far too many times, so I have a laser focus on checking whether it's active or not, and that is inactive. It actually was Devolving Missiles in the Paveling book, if you can believe it, which would have been pretty sick on the previous turn. But, I mean, it's still not bad now, just in terms of swinging the tempo nice and quickly.
And just to make sure everybody's on the same page about why Kazakus is not active, it's because Bankyugi has this one of Libram of Justice in his deck, which was discounted to 4 by the Aldor attendants. So he's going to have to wait for Aldor Truthseeker. Oh wait, it's still not going to work, right? Because of the Libram of Judgment.
Yeah. Exactly. And then if he plays another Truth Seeker, it still won't work because the Libram of Hope will still be disrupting it as well. This is why I'm not a fan of this specific build from Bankyugi. I think that, you know, if you take out the Judgment, then Kazakus becomes a lot more active. But I think just having Carrier Roam for the most part makes a lot more sense, as most players have not gone for actually this week, interestingly enough.
Well, Shaxy is going to go for his own Kazakus now. I believe he took the 5 cost, fits the curve very nicely. I saw an option for copying this minion, which is always very strong on the 5 cost. Bankyugi does get a good avenge off here, but it's honestly what he really needs after this Aldor Truthseeker is to find an attendant, because that's the one that makes the breakpoints easier for Kazakus to deal with.
Well, yeah, bump the Truthseeker. It's a pretty easy turn here.
Shaxy with the Grom's Blood. I didn't quite catch what keyword he has on this golem, but I can't imagine there would be other plays than that. It looks really strong on this board.
Yeah, I think pretty much no matter what you take, it's going to be disgustingly powerful. Divine Shield, you'd have to guess, would be the dream outcome most of the time. But even Rush here or Stealth, all perfectly reasonable outcomes.
Really just taunt and lifesteal that you don't quite want here.
Yeah.
If he is concerned about clearing these minions, we could see a Wicked stab line into Swindle, but I feel like that's far less consistent than just the guaranteed stats on board you get from the Greater Golem.
I wonder.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he hasn't just slammed it on the board, I think, does somewhat imply that this isn't Divine Shield. Otherwise, it would be absolutely broken against this board.
No matter what it is, though, Bankyugi does have that Devolving Missiles he picked up a while ago that will be pretty useful dealing with these Stealth Golems.
That's still pretty good, yeah. Very, very nice to...
Ooh, or you could just take a 0-cost Libram of Judgment right now. I guess it doesn't do much here, yeah, because of the Stealth. So you can just keep that in his back pocket, take some trades, and carry on.
Yeah, I mean, it affords him the ability to go face here, I suppose, by just attacking with one of the weapons in first. But yeah, this is a little preemptive, isn't it?
It just feels strange to actively give your opponent Magma Ragers that are good, or to an extent where they can take trades you actually want to do. But well, the big thing it does prevent, I suppose, is having one golem be able to value trade over Aldor Truthseeker. But if he was going to get the Libram back and do it this way, then I really don't see how much this justice accomplished.
Also, Gia, we live in a core set world. You have to be viewer friendly. These are ice rages that are bad, not magma rages that are good.
I'm too old. Derek, show my age. And this is what Bankyugi was missing last game. A field contact, getting the work done.
Yep, Guardian Orc Merchant on his own field contact, not these golems. Seems like a pretty decent way to end the turn as well.
Yeah. The one more health on the Aldor Truthseeker is quite annoying for Shaxy here, but he has rested back board control, and Bankyugi is just running out of resources. He needs his attendant to make the Kazakus active.
Yeah, for real. I mean, even the fact that his... what is it called? I'm blanking on the name of the card. The Knight of Anointment didn't draw him his Libram of Hopes is pretty unfortunate as well, because that's what's blocking him now at this point, given that they cost 4 mana. It's just so unfortunate the way this all shakes out.
He's at least able to get rid of the field contact and take back the board control, but Shaxy has access to Jandis now. He has the tail of his cat peeking out in the corner of his camera, wishing him good luck. He has not that much time left.
Let's hope that good luck is all that he's giving him on that camera.
And Crick's wife shows up as well here.
or rather doesn't, and that's the problem, which is why he's a 310 that smashes face.
Jandis, I'm always on board for a Jandis play. He can also go for Wicked Stab to get rid of the 5-4, although I suppose he's not sure what the secret is.
What makes something real?
We haven't seen any secrets activated yet from Bankyugi. This is the worst Jandis I've seen all expansion. What?
Yeah, that is not the Jandis that you're looking for.
You're getting minimum 4 attack, 5 health on everything with death rattle effects or frenzy effects.
Well, I mean, that's why I'm the best player in APAC, Gia. Let's be honest.
I just saw another highlight pass before our eyes there. Cat just strutting in front of the camera. He knows that Shaxy's in a good spot. But here is finally something proactive for Bankyugi to do.
Yeah, and this opens up some...
It's still not active though because of the Librams of Hope.
I hope he
just playing it as a 3-3?
We'll see from his reaction.
Oh no!
Okay,
I guess he just played it to corrupt. Okay, biting the bullet there was Bankyugi. Feels horrible.
And this is the main thing. This is what I wanted to
just go face now? I'm so sorry.
Right, no, exactly. Yeah, this is the point I wanted to bring up, is that he all of a sudden has the option to just push everything face. If he draws Penflingers with 2 Libram of Wisdoms in hand, he could just launch everything to the dome and hope that that gets there in the next couple of turns. There's no heal, no taunt in the deck. It's a valid plan.
I mean, this was technically a 3-turn lethal setup because he had 7 on the board and then 15 from his weapon across 3 turns. It is very, very optimistic to think that'll work though, especially if you leave up an Octobot on the board. So Bankyugi is hedging a bit here, and I don't know what single card he can get at this moment other than Liadrin that'll give him enough gas.
Liadrin, I mean, Libram of Hope might just be able to buy him the time to draw through to the better cards in his deck, I suppose. But you're not wrong. It is looking pretty grim at this point, which is kind of why I wanted to just launch everything at the face and say I have to draw Penflinger to have much of a chance at all.
And on the flip side here, Shaxy with the other 3-cost card that draws you more stuff is not running out of options whatsoever. I will remember these names one day. That day is not today.
Yeah, I mean, he's only played 3 cards so far. So you go Wicked Stab, then Plunderer. It's very, very clean here.
The horse gallops to its doom, and Shaxy inches closer towards getting rid of Bankyugi's hopes. Okay.
This is not
Yeah, I don't know. Like, even at this point, getting the Liadrin, I have my doubts as to whether or not it's going to work. If you can get Penflinger as well, then maybe you can get some kind of a chain where you survive long enough to deliver lethal damage. But Bankyugi is being a trade gamer right now.
Yeah, I think he committed to this line the second that he cleared the Octobot and didn't send all his damage face, because I mean, truly, if he had just swung face there over 2 turns, he would run out of damage. Even if you get Liadrin and all the buff spells, if you don't have Penflinger to go with it, then Shaxy's very likely to just come back on board. So this is a committed line. Whether it's correct, I can't say, but at least Bankyugi's being consistent about it.
That's true. Yeah, I still have my doubts because I think it's very clear at this point, unless you, like, either way, I suppose you have to get lucky. If you go for the board line, you're hoping to get Libram of Hope into Libram of Hope and then win that way. If you go for the damage line, you're hoping to get Liadrin and Penflinger really to have any chance whatsoever. So either way, I suppose you do have to get a bit lucky. My instinct is just telling me that pushing face there was more likely to give you a somewhat cheesy win.
The problem is, even though he does have Liadrin here, I don't think he's played Hand of Adal at all this game, so it's not even giving him Cycle. It's just giving him one big Liadrin if he really wants it. And that is not likely to get there because Shaxy, even though he's had to deal with all this lifesteal and taunt from Bankyugi, has Masks of Kassoon, he has the Penflingers, and still one more Secret Passage in his deck.
Yeah, Yeah, well, you may as well just go hero power first, because you are going to have mana spare unless you want to pre-equip Sword of the Fallen, which I don't see much point in.
If we take a look at what Shaxy has left in his deck, take note the Wicked Stabs are not actually there. Sorry, it's a bit bugged at the moment. The burst is actually pretty minimal. I will say Bankyugi, because he's committed to clearing board like this and going for the lifesteal, has a small window. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be serious too, but this cat, it's just, oh man, I can't. It's too cute.
It's going to be a good season, Gia. It's going to be a very good season, I can tell
We already have top 5 moments in this. Your job is done, Dar.
Yeah. Coming this week, top 5 Meowments. Make sure you're tuning in for it. Yeah, and here finally he launches it to the dome. I think he's realizing, yes, board control is essentially lost at this point, even with these giant stonking minions. He's just hoping that maybe one of them can stick just to deliver that lethal push, and I think wisely so, going for the dome at this point.
Yeah, I think Shaxy is forced to clear both of these minions, because if you clear just one, the other will stick, and all the Librams come back to buff it into 10 attack anyway.
Or he has to try and go for the kill, right? Mask of Cthulhu is not going to be doing all that much to the face, most likely here. But I guess he's hoping that it can clear him the board, which it can.
Wow, did that just shoot 6 onto a minion?
It did indeed. That's pretty nice.
Single minion. Okay, the odds of that do not seem likely to me, but go off, Shaxy. The important thing is he realizes that he does have to clear the board one way or another. He will have been trading minions here. The mask, I think, just makes it a bit more convenient, these trades.
Yeah, but even so, like, if you're going for this line where you're trying to clear, surely the Penflingers come down first, right? Like,
yeah.
I know he wanted to get information as to how the missiles would fly, but you could just point them both at the Liadrin. You have to clear them both anyway.
Actually, I mean, if you know Bankyugi's hand is all Librams and just one card,
that's true.
I mean, one Penflinger is very likely to stick, at least, if not both.
Okay, fair enough. I guess if they have a Penflinger in hand as their remaining card,
right,
they just have lethal anyway, right? Because they can just play all the Librams as the remaining 9 cards and deal 10 damage on that turn.
No, in retrospect, I really like the play from Shaxy.
Okay, fair enough. I take it back.
And Bankyugi is doing the only thing he can here, is just setting up this next big wall of minions. He's just banging on the gates, taking advantage of the fact that Shaxy has played both his Wicked Stabs, both of the Wand Thieves, so there's just not much to discover at this moment. He has a Shadow Step, both Shadow Steps still in the deck though, so I think that's the out here for Shaxy to put that on the Wand Thief and try to get some stuff done.
Yeah, obviously Devolving Missiles would pretty much end the game if you can get that, if not put him in a very, very favorable position.
However, Shaxy doesn't know whether or not this is Omayog, so now he has another dilemma as to whether you're supposed to passage first to make sure you get Shadow Step off, because in terms of what else is left in his deck, it's only the other Shadow Step that's good in this situation. So I think he correctly tests first with the Secret Passage. And that's so funny. Okay, Shaxy now has a pet cat and a pet horse. And mana flexibility, does 9 mana have any difference to 8 for mage spells? I don't think so. So he's going to Penflinger first. And he needs a miracle here.
Yeah, we're looking for Brain Freeze, Devolving Missiles, Deep Freeze, Snap Freeze?
Snap Freeze, that's in Standard!
Okay, that's keeping him in it.
But Bankyugi still has top deck outs. We know that both the Libram of Hope are still in his deck. That would be a disaster. And we can see here, Northwatch can draw him not much, huh? Hand of Adal and Libram of Hope, that's it.
I mean, he's not dead though, unless it's a spell off the top. It's 1 damage off lethal here.
Oh wait, no, it's Penflinger. And the weapon's still active, so... Oh yeah, you're right, you're right.
It's 1 off
5
though, right?
damage.
Yeah.
But Shaxy's remaining cards thankfully we can see are mostly spells. It's just Prize Plunder, Ogremancer that don't work, and the Shadow Step will close out the game.
Didn't even need that. I can't even count. Just delivers the lethal easily there with the pen flinger. Nicely done there by Shaxy. That was a close one. I thought, honestly, Bankyugi might have turned it around just towards the end. With that one big minion, but the freeze in the end. It was well played there by Shaxy, to be fair. I think it was very good recognition that actually the Shadow Step was more valuable to him than the Secret Passage. The vast majority of the time, that is not going to be the case, but he knew he just needed one Transform effect, one freeze effect, and he was handsomely winning that game. Again, it's just been a pretty good series, I think, so far from Shaxy. I've liked a lot of what I've seen.
It's been really tough decisions both ends, and I'm still, gonna defend Bankyugi's trade line. I think on average, if you just ship that all face, you do lose board before you can deal the lethal. And Bankyugi just did not hit Hands of Adals or Libram of Hope to draw him towards staving off. Because you can see if he had just gotten one more big spell to play, then Shaxy was completely run dry of resources.
Right, but he was healing for 5 every turn. Like, that's the real benefit of Libram of Judgment, is that you can swing face and you're kind of defending at the same time just by merit of healing. Like, I don't know, with a 3-10 on the other line, Libram of Judgment already having been played, right? I really have my questions as to whether or not it was a consistent line to be able to get there. Obviously, in the end, it did come down to needing a freeze effect to stay in the game there for Shaxy, so I suppose it did work out for Bankyugi in that respect, but I don't know, I still have my qualms.
It was a really close one for sure, and I'm glad that we can start arguing again, Derek. It means the new GM season has truly been rung in. I'm excited to see how the series shakes out at the end, though, because it is perhaps the most questionable deck left for Shaxy in that Token Druid, which, again, I'm still waiting to see whether it can prove the ladder stats wrong here in a tournament setting.
Yeah, I mean, again, as I've said with this deck, it's very similar to the old version of Token Druid, even with, of course, the rotation through to the core set and losing 3 expansions worth of pretty decent cards to the deck. The main core is still in play, where you have Gibberling, Glowfly Storm was your way to generate boards. Arbor Up is one of the biggest presents that any board-based, token-based, or any druid really has been given in a very long time, specifically when in combination with Solar Eclipse. But the problem is really just in the inconsistency of the draw, even with the addition of Fungal Fortunes in order to give you more consistent card draw, find those powerful effects. I still just find that it's a little bit inconsistent for my liking. You don't guarantee yourself those dominant hands every time, but obviously when you do get them, it's absolutely cuckoo bananas how powerful it is.
And I will say that Shaxy's list is already one of the more streamlined versions out there. On ladder, I'm still seeing people play Guff, Rune Totem, that I feel like is a bait of a card. Like, I wish it were good, because a lot of the designs on these legendaries are super fun to play with. Like, I wish the poison generating legendary and rogue would be a thing, but you just kind of find out that the cards that naturally already do the additional bonus effects of these legendary minions do it for cheaper and more consistently.
I mean, well, we do see that Blitzchung does, he's got Guff in his deck, at least. Which is another reason why he's everyone's favorite Hearthstone player. It's a card that I was very much hyping up. I was one of the players saying, new Edwin, to Guff Rune Totem. Hasn't quite worked out so far, I will admit, but I have faith that Blitzchung will be flying the flag when we do get to see him play. But now, jumping into the match proper, we can see Shaxy on the Druid. You need a very dominant start to take down the Rogue because of the speed with which they develop their own dominating boards with Jandice and the disruption that they can throw down with Cult Neophyte. That is a beautiful card to see in your starting hand.
Cult Neophyte is a card I've been a bit skeptical of as an inclusion in Rogue, that because I feel like there's so many different ways you can go about building Rogue that why would you play a card that doesn't necessarily give you proactive advantage? But there's so many decks that rely on spells at a certain turn, and if they miss that window, they fall far behind against Rogue because suddenly Jandice is coming down. Druid is definitely one of those decks.
I was fully on board with Neophyte on 2. Now I want to go Octobot on 2. If they play anything and you can bump it, you then just have Coin Jandis, which, if it doesn't win you the game, obviously, will put you in a very, very strong position nonetheless. And the Cult Neophyte has no benefit to really lock them out of the game at this point. I think waiting until turn 4 or 5 is a much stronger idea overall.
Right, and because of that, Shaxy, not to say that he had a particularly good Gibberling to begin with, but it's kind of saying here that you concede that they are going to get the buff. So instead of just waiting one turn and then you get punished by them having Penflinger or something like that to give them the buff anyway, I'm just going to build the board for myself.
Oh, and just look at how this works out. Being able to go bump into the Gibberling that still has the Spell Burst effect, as that is always left as a 1-1, kind of an unfortunate part of the card, means you're not afraid of a big board being developed. You get your own Jandis to throw down. You have double Neophyte to follow up with if you want to as well. This is absurd.
This is brutal. And Shaxy going into 4 mana doesn't have access to Arbor Up just yet either. So his best play is Soul of the Forest, which feels very lackluster here.
Yeah, I guess I don't hate the idea of Soul of the Forest. I think I would honestly look at Guess the Weight a little bit more heavily, though, because you do want to juice up that Glowfly Swarm. You want to add spells, not remove them from your hand. Even if Soul of the Forest does have the benefit of setting up for a stronger Arbor Up next turn.
I was going to say even Hero Power with Guess the Weight is pretty valuable against this Jandis board if you have, you know, the 50-50 read. But this Lightning Bloom now opens up an Arbor Up possibility for Shaxy to take quite possibly value trades if it was going to be the play, but he is just going to delay it a bit longer. Yeah,
I think it just wasn't quite good enough there. Like, giving the illusioned minion the ability to trade up into one of your Gibberlings or, I suppose, Treants it would be from the Arbor Up, it's just a little bit too good, as Shaxy just instantly nails the right one, doesn't even think about it.
Yeah. That's just the way you beat Jandis. Don't think about the overthinking. Just hit the one on the left. And looks like he is going to take, you know, what looks like an ugly trade to just prevent any Shadow Step shenanigans. I completely respect that. If they can Jandis again, it looks really bad for you.
Yeah. I mean, if they had Shadow Step, they would have played it right, but, I mean, Secret Passage or just getting it off the top is also a real concern, I suppose.
Oh, this is brutal, though, for Shaxy.
It's just insane.
So that means it's a turn pretty much completely passed outside of guessing the weight. And Bankyugi, honestly... is this Passage or just another Neophyte? Okay, looks like he's spreading out the Neophytes. This is probably much smarter than what I was suggesting, because you get to delay a Glowfly turn and possibly a Glowfly plus mana turn on the next one.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of this line that Bankyugi is going for. With the way it's set up, he could have Neophytes for like the next 3, maybe even 4 turns if he wanted to Shadow Step and save the Neophyte on this turn, although that may be a little bit greedy. It's just impossible for Shaxy to do anything, and I think he's going to be dead long before he's able to get a big board even developed, let alone attacking face.
These aren't the greatest spells to discover off of One Thief for this situation, but it honestly doesn't matter. Bankyugi, as long as he has anything to trigger his Penflingers, he's setting up lethal in the very near future.
Oh, it just hurts my soul. Like, the fact that you have to go Guess the Weight and then increase both of the cards by a further 1 mana, and then get another Neophyte on the next turn, and maybe another one the turn after. There's just nothing that you can do here.
There's Bloom Glowfly, that works, right? But it's ugly. Very ugly.
Disgusting.
That is a very expensive guidance. Shaxy is not even gonna bother. I think it's a reasonable conclusion to come to.
Yeah, that one was well and truly over. Well played by Bankyugi. I agreed with pretty much every line that he took along the way from the mulligan, keeping the Jandis in order to lock down that mid-game, as well as his rationing out of the cult neophytes as well. I think that it was just a very good understanding of that matchup in general, which does mean now that we are left with, again, the Token Druid, the deck that you were thinking, may start to struggle a little bit based on the statistics. We wanted to see it in action first before we draw any judgments, but a 2-game sample size is quite famously more than enough to draw conclusions in Hearthstone, and we're giving it the big thumbs down.
Oh yeah, Token Druid. Throw it in the bin. We'll never see it again. Just kidding. This is APAC. We'll see it every week, especially after some of the nerfs hit, I think, at least. In terms of its matchup versus Miracle Rogue and Watchpost Rogue, it was closer to the 50% mark, so I'd already call that one of the better matchups for Token Druid, at least as far as the ladder stats go. Against Paladin, the stats have it at around 44%, which is abysmal. But I kind of struggle to see why that is, because Paladin traditionally has not been able to deal with wide boards all that efficiently. But I assume if you don't hit the Gibberling start, Paladin will just play their own 2 or 3 1-drops immediately, and you can fall far behind.
Yeah, I definitely envisage that's the way it's going to be going. You're looking for the same stuff you're pretty much always looking for here as Bankyugi, Sword of the Fallen, any kind of 1-drop, Hand of Adal, and, whether or not you keep the mid-game, Aldor Truthseeker specifically, is a little bit more debatable, I think, at this point. It's gone from an auto-keep to a sometimes keep, depending on what the rest of your hand is looking like, and especially against Token Druid. I imagine that your initial instincts are bang on the money with wanting to go for as much development out of the gate, as much secret playing as well to make it as awkward as possible for your opponent. Does feel like the way to go. But I'm just glad that we're getting such a close matchup already. Such decision-dense games, I think, bodes well for the matchups that we're going to be seeing a lot of. Make no mistake, with nearly everyone bringing Rogue and Paladin and Mage being banned away. We're going to be seeing these decks a lot.
Yeah, nearly everybody in APAC has banned Mage. It's notably the Korean players that have gone for Paladin bans instead, but their performance has been all across the board. Surrender went straight through, so we're not going to see him play today. Dawn, unfortunately, fell already 2 matches, so that means we also won't see him, but possibly Chonsu is going to give us a taste of what the ban Paladin and bravely leave up Mage strategy actually looks like. Because to be fair, Paladin has been quite a force when we've seen it on stream as well.
And here it is, the final game of this series. Shaxy's got himself, again, what looks like a pretty good hand here, right? He's got Gibberling Studies, Innovate Coin, and it feels like if there was any matchup where this could run away with the game, this has to be the one. Essentially no removal in the deck in these early turns, just relying on its own development. I think the only thing that's going to be keeping Bankyugi in the game is the fact that he has this powerful 1-drop heavy start.
It just says a lot when you toss Glowfly Swarm and that's it as a hand as Druid, because previously that was the card you wanted most, but it's because it's completely counterintuitive to the Gibberling plan that Shaxy does that. He is apparently going to hold off a bit longer. I'm not sure if that gives him any more breakpoints with the nature studies than it usually would. But I don't know, I was interested in going off immediately, not gonna lie.
Gets a pretty nice synergy between his minions there with the Hellbore and Emerald Sky Talon in order to get a 3-2 rush. But as Gia was indicating, yeah, it's going to have to be a very good Emerald Sky Talon to fight back against this one, or a devastating Oh My Yogg to keep Bankyugi in this one.
Yeah, okay. It was Oh My... okay.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
So that now means that Shaxy's... still gonna go in, right? Sigils.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, enemy minions, right?
Yeah. You go Lightning Bloom, Studies, Soul of the Forest. So clean here. The board running away with things very, very easily.
The Eclipse is interesting, but I guess, yeah, not going to be playable with a card for a long time given his overload, so he's just going to take the Landscaping, and Bankyugi's got the face of somebody who just got Jabberwockied.
Well, you can trade to take out a Gibberling and a Treant, and then Emerald Sky Talon to value trade, I suppose, on the remaining Gibberling, plus hero power, or you could just take your Northwatch Commander and be happy about it, or very sad about it.
I think I'm more on board for the second one, especially the being sad about it part. The good news, quote unquote, is that Shaxy has 1 mana next turn. And so your stuff is unlikely to get cleared. I'm just really impressed at Shaxy's combined APM of playing Hearthstone and handling a cat.
I mean, it's oddly thematic, right? The beasts coming to his aid. It's what you'd expect as a druid player. Oh my god, it just keeps coming.
Oh, he actually drew one of the few playable spells here. Gets another Gibberling. And how is Bankyugi coming back from this? I don't know. Arbor up is just too much next turn.
I think the Druid finally hit it. You know, I've been talking about it all series. Like, when it hits it, it's unbeatable, but it just had not been hitting this kind of a start. And now it finally has. Arbor up available with the discount carrying over from the previous turn with the nature studies is just going to be too much to bear for Bankyugi.
Job's done.
Did he get the second Oh My God? That seems like his out here.
That's the out, I suppose, yeah.
I don't think he did, though. But, well, to be fair, Shaxy has to consider it. Looks like he is just not, or taking the chance because it's the least likely outcome at that point. Or I suppose equally likely to the remaining 1 Avenge. And
Sure, trade, why not? You still have lethal either way. It does not matter.
Talon, all things considered, is probably the best individual card he can have for this turn, but it is not getting there. His best is not good enough against a start like that.
Yeah, brutal way to go about it, but this is why you bring Token Druid. Eventually it's going to hit a game like this where it is essentially impossible to lose. And it was, you know, well timed out there by Shaxy. He had a couple of turns on turn 1 and 2 where he could have gone for an early Gibberling, but he did very wisely hold back until it was absolutely necessary to go for it, and he got the bloom. Couldn't have been more perfect.
Yeah. Not quite lethal just yet, but I was thinking Shaxy was just going to choose to not play any spells altogether, thinking that his only way to lose from this point is Oh My God doing something egregious.
Right.
In the end, though, he does go for the draw after doing other things, so not quite optimal.
Pounce are very close to lethal as well. I guess it would proc the Galloping Savior at that point instead.
And that means that, unfortunately for Bankyugi, that is going to be his week 1 run coming to an end here. For anyone who's just tuning in now, we are just viewing all the decider matches today because the initial matches were played off stream yesterday, guys. So that means Shaxy is going to be moving on to Saturday quarterfinals alongside Alutamu from Group A.
Yeah, well fought from both competitors here. I think it was a strong series overall. You know, the biggest thing I took umbrage with, I suppose, was like the direction that was taken by Bankyugi in his Paladin game, whether he should go more aggressive or not. But it was really just a difference in philosophy. His line was still very, very valid, as you were correctly pointing out. But from Shaxy on the other side, just clinical with all his games, absolutely locking them out one after the other. It was only the Druid that looked like it could be struggling, and then he gets the win in the end. So we are going to be seeing Shaxy playing tomorrow in the quarter-final match, as that is our first initial match, or decider match, I should say, of the day, already done. What a way to kick things off for the year.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Going all the way down to 5 games, a mage ban, so we don't have to quite start off with something pretty much everyone is already seeing on ladder now that we're on stream. But I was especially a fan of that second to the last game with the Rogue versus Paladin. I think there was so much going on there in both macro and micro. And the best part is we have new toys to play with.
Quite right, with our fancy new ability to pull up cards